In landscape painting, there are so many elements that have to come together to help our painting be a cohesive, whole, complete painting. Those elements that help tie every little part of it, every little detail together to make it work overall. One of those elements is the darks. It is very important to tie our darks together, to make some sort of continuity, so as the viewer looks at our painting, their eye always continues around the picture plane, and we keep them in that picture plane. You don't want their eye wandering off the picture plane and heading out into the netherworld. We want to keep them engrossed and involved in our painting so they have time to react to all that we have put in there and to bring a piece of themselves as well to have the full experience of our painting. One thing I find very important for me and for most people, I think, is when we're planning to start with a charcoal sketch, a black and white sketch. It can be charcoal or pen and ink, whatever you want to do it. I use a large tool. Notice I have blocked out some shapes that are in proportion to the shape I'm going to use for my paper. And I can just start very quickly with these small thumbnails to make some experiential decisions about where I want to lay out my composition. The nice thing with it being so small is that you make these decisions quickly. And with this, I can also rapidly connect my darks together. I'm already, as I'm looking at the photo, because I wish I were out plein air painting, but we can't always do that, so often we will use photographs to help us as our resources. I'm starting that, and by translating the photo into a charcoal sketch, I move away from getting too involved in the photograph, and I start making the decisions that will pull me and guide me to a finished painting. I do somewhat like this composition. It's quite different from the photo, actually, and I'll put the photo up beside this when I'm done. But already I'm considering tying my darks together. Notice in these trees, I don't come down through the trunks, because when the trunks grow, they grow up. So it's good to keep your marks going in the direction of the way that something grows. I like that, but it feels a little unbalanced. Tying my darks together. I'm going to try this again because this one's okay. Kind of like that. But I want to try again. Now, I have visually in my head, but I should do this on the paper, is divided my picture plane into thirds. I do believe I want the main focus on this tree right here. And in the photo, it's very conically shaped until it gets about 2/3 of the way down, and then I think the lower branches have been cut so that people can walk under them, because they stop at a certain level above the ground. But the nice thing about that for my painting is that it will leave light shining through the tree trunks. I like this diagonal as well, even though, sorry, I'm going to try to get rid of that. That was part of my original box. I have this strong vertical element, and I like vertical because to me it indicates strength and energy. There's also this wonderful, almost diagonal of darks running across these trees here. It's a little touch up in here. I don't want these to be too much alike. Look how close they are in similarity, so I need to adjust that so they're different, because that's what's going to keep it more interesting. Okay, see if I can get, it's not making a good dark there, that's better. Wasn't making a good dark line as I was on its side. And then a little bit of darks down here. Now I think this one is a little better. There's a tree line off there in the distance, and there's light behind these trees. But I kind of like this second sketch, this second thumbnail. And I can add details in. It's coming together. It is pulling these darks here. So the eye comes in, and I'm going to lighten around here. And then I have this mid-tone, which pulls the eye back up around toward the tree this way. So you can see I already have. So as you see, I have the eye moving around in the picture plane without going off the edges. It comes up here. It almost does there, but I'll bring a little branch or something over this way that'll tie it down to this branch coming down into this tree on this side. So it'll come around, and I'll work that in. It comes down around this way, not too much contrast. This will be a little faded out on the edges, out of focus, bringing it around to this little scrubby area on the ground here. And this curve will bring the eye back up around and keep us in that picture plane. See, within a very short amount of time, I've tried a couple sketches, I'm feeling good, and it has given me direction for my painting. Now, before I start again on the paper, I am considering my color scheme. I want to stay, there's a nice light that comes through from behind the trees that's a light peach color. So that's over in this family, and I want that to be my spice. I want that to pop. So everything else, I think, needs to be over in this blue purple to blue green area. I had put some colors down. The first blue I put down was too bluish green. It needed to be more of a purple green. So, I mean a purple blue, sorry about that. So I've switched this up a little bit, and I think that blue is going to go better. My first green was a little too yellowish, so I had to bring that back a little more toward the blue, because I want it soft. I want it grayed down, and then I'm going to bring in that soft peach color as my spice. The first three colors I put in there, just they didn't sing as much. This sings a little better. I'm not sure if it does on the video or not, but there it is. So I'm sticking around this area as analogous, basically color scheme, with a hint of that orange peach over here on the complementary. And I am using the CMY or CYM color wheel, which is my cyan, yellow, and magenta. Let's get into it. We've decided on this. I'm going to start with my vine charcoal, divide my picture plane into thirds. That's based on the golden mean developed by the Greeks, but that does help give. And my center of interest will be between here with that highlight behind, and secondary center of interest down at the intersection of these two thirds here. I want this loose, I want it nice. I'm looking more at my sketch here and letting my hand, by using a good side of this charcoal, most of it, laying it down. See, it's not just a little stroke on the tip like this. I'm laying this down, and I'm moving it up and down in angles to get more interesting strokes. The sanded paper is picking up better on the charcoal, so it's pulling those trunks in very nicely. I just glanced over at my photograph, just kind of curiosity, seeing what might be happening. I don't want that exactly on the third over here. I'm going to bring this one in a little more and a little lower so I can keep that vignette feeling in here. And once I get this down, then I'll add some color into it. I've laid some darks in, working the composition roundabout. I started with my bluish purple, which I think is going to be my darkest color. I want this dark, and even though I talk about tying my darks together, I don't want it so dark that when I put glass over this, the colors totally disappear. I've learned that over time, that if you get those deep, deep, rich blacks or darks, that by the time you glass it and frame it, they almost disappear. I was also going to do a time lapse with this, but realized that I'm seeing already this painting's going to come along quite quickly. I'm going to come in now with my something in the same family, kind of a blue. Let me put my colors here, and I'll take a picture of these after, close up. So there's that deep blue. It doesn't look as deep on this charcoal paper. And now some of this element. Now, as I'm putting in branches, I'm still thinking this is a branch. It's reaching up to the sun. Well, it's been reaching up. I mean, it's only dawn here in this particular picture right now. And I want to be intermittent. I'm still staying in the darks. I need to bring this down around a little bit to keep the eye flowing in. Maybe there's some little shadows across that grass coming down. And the light here is catching on the tips of the scrub, not down in this darker area. I often like to leave a hint of the paper showing through. If you have a toned paper, that can add some really just natural and relaxed elements into your painting. Back here, I'm fading this back. It's a little lighter. These trees are set a little further back. And you can see I'm constantly using as much of the side of the pastel as I can this way, but every now and then I'll tip up on the tip, or I'll twist it, and I keep moving my hand back and forth. So all my strokes are not going in the same direction. I mean, that adds an element of interest as well, but that's not what is happening in this painting. This is not what I'm looking for. I'm going to step it up one more value for this, but not too much, because I'm going to have that sky behind really be the glow. Tips of those trees in the background. There are clouds going across behind in the photograph, but I don't want those. Those are going to take away the interest of the element. There is some fog here, and I do want to pull out some of that fog in that distant field. And I'm just pressing, by touching it, I'm just pressing the pastel into the sanded paper and also softening that foggy feel back there. Just touching the edges so there's no sharp edges at that point. You want your lost and found edges. I kind of like that. Again, I'm going to try to keep it quite simple. Maybe a couple touches of this here, just to tie this light blue together. So even though we're talking about tying our darks together, the darks tied around this way, I've lost a bit there, so let's add a little bit of those back in. Yeah. So it does tie them together. This is going to have some soft shadows that bring it down and around. Again, vignetting, tying this together somewhat. Every element is. The marks are tied together. The darker blues are tied in that same value, that same composition, pulling everything together. Now, before I get too far, I've laid in my blues. I basically left those in the tree area, and now I'm going to go into some of my soft greens. And we had decided to, don't you love how I include you in on this? We have decided that that bluish green is the color that I'm going to be using for this. It's going to bring a glow in behind those trees. I want to vary the shape of this a little bit. And then that can kind of fade off in behind in the distance here. Just a hint of it back there. Just a hint. I was just barely caressing the sanded pastel area back there. Do I want this in the sky? I'm going to have to think about that one. But I like this light hitting the field. There's that distant tree line with the fog, and then this lighter field area that's catching some of that morning sun. Before I get too far, I need to keep in mind what's going on with this. So I am going to add in some of that dawn pink that's behind this tree. Each mark I make, I'm trying to vary it. I don't want them the same size. I don't want them the same intensity. I need them stronger near this area of the tree that's going to be basically my center of interest. And here I need to follow it around this branch that's coming out from the tree. So I angle the pastel to bring in that branch. Here I'm just softening again, vignetting those edges as I come along. The continuity, barely caressing with this color in the background to softly make a continuity of that peach. I've added more than I had originally intended, but I do need to pull it together. Now I want some of the peach down in here again to kind of tie this around, bring this around. And there is some warmth down in the grass, but it's deeper than that. So now I'm going to switch to a deeper color in that family. I've just gone to my values, brought it down a bit. Making a little more of an interesting shape over here. So I have this like triangle shape here of the green, almost a triangle shape of this russet and kind of triangle shape. So my form shapes tend to be repeating triangles. Okay, I don't want that too much. Just want hints of it here and there. Just soft little tiny vertical strokes through those trees, and I'm still trying to maintain the shape of the tree as I put it in. All right, I need more of a neutral bluish green. It's almost too intense. So I come back to my box and I look for something that's a little deeper and not quite so intense. And I have to try it off to the side. It's really, I need it more grayed. This is the excitement of looking for pastels. All right, I need a bluish green that is grayed. Where am I finding that? Then you end up with people who have so many pastels in your box. I don't even know sometimes how they decide which one to choose. That is too yellow. But this looks rather grayed. It's too yellow. But this one, still too intense. I'm going to try that one. And if I just caress it, I just very lightly skim over the tip top of the sand on the paper, it's not going to grab too much of that pastel. It's going to grab enough to indicate and tie together the greens in the background there. Yeah. Continuity, continuity. And now I need to bring some of this up into the treetops to bring that green, to tie that around somehow. Because if the eye's down here, and this is the only place that there's green, it's not going to pull your painting together. So if you pick a color up, you need to touch it in more than one place. Here I'm skimming over that russet peach color to neutralize it. See how that softens and neutralizes that quite nicely. All right, stepping back, looking how we're doing. I think value-wise that this is really popping out, so I know eventually I'm going to have to come back in and pop out that a little bit more as well. I need to decide what to do with the sky. If I need to keep it somewhat down in tonal value. This is a little too far down. I'm going to bring this up just a little bit. The grasses. I want them to be a little more separate from these grasses and the trees in the foreground. So I have just upped the value a little bit, made it a little lighter. Okay, I think that pulls that together a little bit more. A little hint of it up here in the sky. What? Green in the sky? Well, what I'm doing is I'm just visually or subconsciously, this will show through and tie together the painting. And now sky. Okay, I want to keep this quite subtle, quite grayed, because it's very early morning. That's pretty bright. No, it's not bright. I'm going to test it over here beside this. I think this might work. Look at this color. I mean, it's kind of grayish, but I think it's going to work here. Up to this point, I have been painting without my glasses on. I find that by taking my glasses off, it helps my shapes to be simplified and blended. What most people do will squint, but there's an advantage as we get older. We don't have to squint so much anymore. We can just take the glasses off. Automatic squinting. Done. I'm blending this a little bit, the texture up here. I like the texture of the paper down in this lower area, but I'm not thrilled with it up high in the sky. I want it that more blended. I hate blending like that, but that's what I'm going to do. I like that. It's soft, it's back. I'm going to see if there's something of a similar value, but it's slightly different hue to come in to add variety. So the sky is just not one flat color. I want to skim over this, tone this down a little bit, blend them together. Not blend, but tie I don't want like the sky up here to be totally separate from the sky area here. So by just glazing over the top of that, it will help them be united. Step back, I want to check to see my darks are still working pretty well. Coming down here across a nice S kind of view. I need to intensify them down here and then bring them back up around here. I can bring in some, so that's that color. See, it's very close, but it is actually, in reality, slightly different. Step back. This is why we painted an easel. You must step back. You can't see. we get so tied up in details you can't see it if you're too close to it all the time. I'm going to go back to my vine charcoal. It's not going to be too dark, but it's going to add some nice interesting marks into this painting, in my humble opinion. If I keep it nicely done, this down through here. Sometimes it's just random marks. Okay, I want to be careful there because I want those trees to set further back. There's a main trunk right here. That has to follow through all the way down. You can't have a trunk coming one way and then it disappears and it goes off over somewhere else. So that has to be consistently coming down through the trees. Make sure that's working. Yeah, I want to kind of bring some dark marks down in here, like there's other trees. It indicates there's other trees in the distance here. And I'm just using a sharper corner of my vine charcoal. See the very edge of that? I can feel it with my finger where that edge is, and I just touch it to the paper there to bring some textures and darks down. I've been testing color down here. I don't want that showing. So it would be better if I had a piece of this paper right beside this paper, but you don't always do that. So what I'm doing is I use the edges of the paper to test my colors to see how it looks. I mean, the colors on this paper and in keeping with the whole painting are going to look very different than they do over on this white paper and kind of as standalone colors. One nice thing about having a phone camera is I can look at it, how it looks in a very small format, and I can see if it's working pretty well. I want this branch coming out here. Yeah, I like that. Too regular right in there, so I'm breaking that up a bit. Let's see. I want some darks here. Even though the sun's just coming up, it is going to be darker under those trees. It has to be. Not as much light is reaching behind here under the trees that is reaching that field in the distance. Okay. Want nice solid trunks here. Stepping back, taking a gander at this. I'd like to know where that expression comes from. Take a gander. I want to add, no I don't. I do want to add a little more something in this area, a little more color. What was that first deep purplish blue? I like that. I think that just a few marks here and there of that. Don't get too carried away with a good thing. Step back, look at it. This is why we take our hands away, so we can look at it. How is that? Does that stroke count towards something? I'm going to add a little more peach up into the sky in this area. A little more areas where the sky peeks through those branches. That's going to add some luminosity into the painting. Think branches. I'm always thinking, where are these branches going? What are they doing up in here? So I don't lose that they have to continue and maintain connection with that tree. I want to skim just a hint of this peach across some areas of the sky. So the sky has now become this greenish gray peach. Love it. Greenish gray peach. There is no such color. But because of pastel and the particles that it is, these particles overlay and peek through each other, and it creates a richness that most other mediums just cannot attain the richness, in my opinion, that pastels can. All right, and then I want to pop that sun. I want to pop the sun that's coming through the trees beyond for the morning dawn. Here I am using more of the tip. That's not too much of a difference. I need something more intense. This, perhaps. And to make something really glow, you don't want to add too much of it. Oh, I don't want that there. I am squinting. I still have my glasses off. And then I want that to pop over in here a couple other spots. Not much, but to bring some sparkle into this painting. Maybe a little hint. That's glancing off some red grasses in the field out there. And catching right along here. Just a little hint. I'm going to step back, look at it. I think I'm going to add a peach, family peach area down in the, now this is a dark peach, and I'm going to let that, I'm just using that sharper edge of the pastel to make a line right along where the light might be catching that tree trunk as it comes skimming across the field. And maybe a hint up here. Just told myself not too much of a good thing. And perhaps one down. Now here it's not going to catch as much sun because it's more into the shadows. But there might be one little ray of sun popping across a couple spots of those trees, those tree trunks. This is a quick demo. Tie the darks together. Are the darks tied together? Pretty well, bringing it around, keeping my eye in. These darks are tied together here, kind of continues that texture down into here. I have this light green going across, a little hint here. It's also connected with some of the greens coming down around here, and there's a softer green up here, but it's so subtle that consciously we almost don't notice it. The peach shining through the trees and then skimming across the grasses here and coming back up and around. So when you step back, check these elements. Take a couple of days, set it aside, come back to it to see what's happening. I'm finding a dark spot in there, and I want to add, I'm going to go a little deeper than what's here, but just a little more light coming through the trees there. Yeah. Being careful they're not too much the same size. Any questions, let me know. I'll take some close-ups of these to look at them. I'd like to see them too. When you're working on something, you don't see it as objectively as when you step back and take a look at it after you've completed.